I hope you're enjoying our new platform that we are using, which is called Let's Go. So we've been partnering with Let's Go to try to understand how to best utilize this environment. We have found, as I'm sure all of you have, that everyone is a little sick of Zoom and Teams. And so this is a whole new view and different way to interact in a workshop setting. And so at your tables, as I'm sure you're realizing right now, you can continue to talk to one another while we're up here on stage. So feel free to have table talk while we're talking. We can't hear you. The other tables can't hear you. So it's another way just to continue to interact. So we're, after I introduce the panelists and we go through some questions, we'll break out in some table talks, and then we'll come back to the tables that we were at in the beginning, Annie and Rick and I, for further conversation. And then you can also see on the left-hand side of your screen, there's a little arrow. And if you click on that arrow, it opens up the map so you can see all of the tables and kind of the whole floor plan of the event center. And at the very end of the session, we'll be popping up to our tables at the very top of that map where you can see post-event. And so we'll be hanging out in those tables. So if anyone wants to talk with us afterwards, we're available to connect and chat with you after the workshop. So without further ado, welcome to our Culture is Everything workshop, where we're here talking about people and culture and what makes your business tick and what makes your businesses move forward. Our focus for today is reimagining the employee experience. And so I have two amazing guests and panelists that are going to be joining us today. Annie and Rick, Annie from Holmes Murphy and Rick from CorTalent. And I'm going to let them do a quick introduction of themselves and just to help understand what their role is, an explanation of their company, and then what I think is most important, why you're passionate about employee experience. So Annie, I'll pass it over to you and have you do a quick introduction of yourself and your company.
Awesome. Thanks, Chelsey. Hi, everyone. Great to be here today. My name is Annie Dittberner. I am a client executive on our employee benefits team at Holmes Murphy. We are a relatively newer name in the Minnesota broker market. We are one of the few privately held, employee-owned insurance brokerages that still exists in the state of Minnesota. And we're really committed to kind of perpetuating that privately held status. And we really believe it allows us to think differently and really lead with innovation and putting our clients first. So I've been in the employee benefits space for about 5 years now. And even in 5 years, the industry has experienced quite a bit of change, a lot of which was, of course, driven by COVID. But I also think we've seen a big shift in the multi-generational workforce. And we've seen employees start demanding more and more from their employers. So a lot of my clients have continued to pose the question, what can I do? And what I've learned is that it's not just about offering a good medical plan with good coverage or even a wellness plan that, asks employees to walk 10,000 steps a day. The employee experience from a benefits perspective is really thinking more holistically about your people and what's important to them. And then, of course, how you're communicating it. So I think one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about this conversation is because I feel fortunate enough to work for an organization that really has made significant strides in improving our own employee experience through different focus groups, employee surveys, leadership training, employee education, communication, you name it. So my experience as an employee at Holmes Murphy really allows me to be a better, consultant and advisor to my employer clients. So happy to be here today. That's a little bit about myself. And I'll toss it over to Rick.
Great. Thanks, Annie.
Yeah. So Rick Ritmaster, VP of Consulting with CorTalent. CorTalent is an executive recruiting firm based in the Twin Cities. And we have just an absolutely fantastic reputation finding executive talent for organizations so that they can strategically build out their leadership teams and accomplish their business goals. About a year ago, Mary and I started chatting with each other. Mary's our CEO and fantastic person. And she said, Rick, what if we built out a consulting practice at CorTalent? And so my background is talent management and strategic human resources. And Mary has a lot of experience in that field as well. And so we kind of started pulling together what a consulting practice might look like. And I was lucky enough to formally join the team around the beginning of the year. And so we've been focusing on meeting with clients and helping clients think strategically about how to leverage the talent within their organization. So if you think about our recruiting practice, it's about how do we strategically add to our organization. Consulting practice is how do we maximize the impact and the value of the talent that we already have. And so at CorTalent, we like to say we help companies get the people part right, whether that's adding to your team or maximizing the value of the members that are already within your team. And I'm passionate about employee experience because similar to what Annie was saying, I think this is an area that has shifted and evolved and changed very rapidly. And so just to kind of get our hands around what employee experience means and how we can leverage it to help our organizations and lead more effectively is a really exciting opportunity. And so I appreciate this time and space to just kind of pause and think about, what does employee experience mean for our organization? How can we leverage some of these best practices to be a little bit better in terms of how we lead our people? So thank you.
Awesome. Well, and what you guys are talking about is exactly why we started this workshop, because you're talking about the people in your organization, the people drive the culture, and culture is everything. And if we can start there and we have strong people and a strong culture, the rest is going to fall into place. And yes, we need to have a great business strategy too. But if you don't have the right people in the right seats with a great, strong culture, with built on trust and built on strong leaders, then you're not going to be able to execute on the customer experience and the goals that you're trying to hit and whatever that might be. So, Annie, I loved when you were talking about, I've experienced a great employee experience within Holmes Murphy. And so because of that, you can help others have that same experience. So it definitely starts at the inside and then exudes to the outside. I just quickly wanted to talk through our model that we have, which is called our impact model. And this is what we feel is the basis for what impacts an organization. And so this is all, you can see on the very bottom, it's conscious leaders. And so it starts with really having self-aware leaders who understand how they think, act, and interact, and how that impacts everyone around them, their direct reports, their peers, their managers, their customers, their suppliers and vendors, and everyone that's around them. And the leaders are the beginning of this. And if we can get strong leaders, they're the ones who are going to create that employee experience. I was just having a conversation yesterday at a conference about what do you do when everyone's remote and how do you make this work and how do you build culture? And you can do it. It takes a lot of intentionality and it takes strong leaders. And you really need to build that culture at the team level. Specifically when you are working remote. So I just wanted to touch on that. We're touching today on a couple different aspects that are within this model, specifically benefits, and then from a recruiting standpoint and data and technology. So we're going to dig into this. And Annie, I have a couple questions for you at the get-go here. So one thing that you were talking with me about that I found really interesting is having core beliefs around your benefit offerings. And I'm very familiar with core beliefs for an organization and from a culture perspective, but how do you apply that to benefits?
Yeah. So we typically, anytime we have a new client relationship, or let's say there's new leaders joining a team that we're working with, we conduct what we call a core beliefs session with all of those executive teams. And what it does is it really, when you think about managing your health plan, there's a fairly wide spectrum, of opinion that exists as it relates to the employer's role in that. And when we have a lot of stakeholders that have some sort of oversight into the insurance and the benefits, there's varying opinions, right? So we want to get really clear about what it is that, your role is as an employer and how can we have some agreement there. We might not all agree on the same thing. But we want to have the conversation to start and then, come to an agreement so that in the future, when we're making decisions that, they're effective, they're efficient, and we can come back to kind of, here's what we believe as an executive team. So some of the questions we pose to our clients in that core beliefs planning session is, okay, do you believe that, as a benefit team, that your role is to simply design and administer a plan? Or do you believe that your role as an employer is to deploy a strategy to really help improve the health status of your people that are actually enrolled on your health plan? Generally speaking, I think one of the questions we always pose is, okay, are benefits an expense to the company, or are they an investment in your people?
Yes.
The same thing that goes with measuring return on investment. I think that's a common thing that we have questions about whenever we're implementing a new solution. And a lot of times, we need to figure out, okay, is measuring ROI going to be simply maybe redirecting the health plan spend reduction, or is it going to be based on activity and engagement and contributing to your overall culture and experience? So that's sort of what we like to look at. Again, there's much more context to this than just what I'm sharing today, but I think it's just bringing key stakeholders together and asking, okay, what should this look like? What's our role as an employer in all of this? And again, 9 times out of 10, that's going to vary greatly. The CFO almost always has a different perspective than HR. But that's why this core belief session is so effective. Is it because it allows those candid conversations to take place and have a conversation about what you fundamentally believe as an organization, and then in turn setting that foundation for what we call a benefits philosophy.
Yeah. So, which is a great roll into my next question is, so if you have this beliefs, and by the way, I think we talk a lot about making little mindset shifts in our thinking, and that's what keeps us moving forward. And so just hearing you talk about, seeing benefits as an investment in your people instead of an expense, I mean, that's huge. Seems like a little mindset shift, but the impact that can have if you shift your mindset that way is ginormous. So I love that you said that. So as we think about having a philosophy around benefits, what does that look like? Does every organization need a philosophy around the benefits, and what can that look like, and what kind of examples might you have around that?
Yeah, I think the first step really in that conversation is kind of acknowledging where you're at today. And a lot of time I always tell my clients a great place to start is just gathering feedback. That could be in the form of an employee survey, or it could be a individual focus group. From there, that allows us to just gather some data and then bring, benchmarking and help, employers understand where maybe they compare to their peers. Maybe it's some areas where they're above benchmark, where they're below benchmark. And, one thing I would add about that is that a lot of times it's also getting clear about who you're benchmarking against. So are you trying to be a leader in the industry, or are you competing for talent in your geographical market? So that's part of the conversation as well. Another variable we really encourage our clients to look at is their compensation. Are you on the high end, the low end, in the middle? And then from there, it's kind of, well, what about from a budgeting standpoint? If today we benchmark your benefits program and you maybe fall a little bit below benchmark, and we know that it's going to take, significant financial investments to improve your program, do you have the capital to do that? I think understanding this is critical. And then, the benefits philosophy, I think I would just say this as well, as it has the potential to evolve and to change over time. So sometimes it's easy to get overwhelmed by this process. But I always tell clients it's, there's no right or wrong answer. It's having these conversations as an executive team to really propel us in the right direction and serve as kind of a starting point in creating a benefits philosophy.
Yeah, and you had this great slide on the evolution of employee benefits. So talk to that. What have some of the evolutions been that you've seen?
Yeah, I think, prior, let's say 5+ years ago, I think employers had kind of a narrow mindset as it related to employee benefits, and that it was, highly focused on medical plan premiums, on bringing in solutions and resources to help with physical health. Maybe just having the right program, the right carriers in place. And that created sort of an inconsistent alignment with the overall mission and vision of an organization's benefits program. we've seen a shift now until, employers are more focused on that multidimensional approach that supports employees and family members, that offers affordability, but also offers choice. And then, is it our goal to become an employer of choice? And if it is, we need to make sure that we have the right strategy, the right resources, and benefits to help get us there. So I think having your benefits kind of serve as a roadmap to help propel you that way is really going to drive that engagement and enable that high performance.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and one of the things we talk about, and you were kind of going towards this, is communication. We talk with our clients all the time about communication, and we do assessments that communication, intentional communication building block always comes back low, because it's really hard to communicate about anything and have consistent communication, regular cadence of communication. And I found this in my experience. I have 15 years of HR experience, and in my experience there is communicating about benefits. A lot of times I had a hard time understanding it, let alone helping to translate that to all of the employees and help them understand what the benefits are and how they change from year to year. And so what are some best practices, and what does great communication look like when it comes to benefits in an organization and how it relates to the employee experience?
Yeah, I love this question because I have a lot to say about it. And for the sake of time, I'll just hit on a few things. I think the biggest flaws that I see in employers' benefits communication strategy is, first and foremost, they only communicate benefits during open enrollment.
Yes.
And at that point, it's too late. I mean, employees are going to be focused on most likely their medical plan and how much is coming out of their paycheck. And then I think the second thing I see is maybe there's already a resource kind of overload, and they actually end up over communicating things that don't matter or that employees don't care about. And then lastly, I would say, I think it's really critical to be really intentional about the right medium that you're using to communicate to a multi-generational workforce. So we've had some clients, implement, texting during open enrollment or different apps to really, activate kind of the open enrollment process, but also throughout the course of the year. And we can discuss this more at our tables for the sake of time, but there are ways to solve for some of these challenges. I think, this screen really shows a graph or a chart of what your generations look like and the different generational personas that exist in the workforce today. So as you can see, we're really heavy on the millennial and Gen X generations. And of course, these are stereotypes a little bit, but I would urge you to use this kind of as, a way to think about your different generations and how to communicate to them, how to, really understand what they're looking for. And again, every organization is different, and every generation has, different priorities and expectations from their employers. But getting clear about who it is that sits in your organization, and then, how can you support them in creating and cultivating a communication strategy that's not only effective, but that is ongoing as well.
Yeah, and what I love about what you're saying is that if you're going to have a really strong, positive employee experience, you really need to take an individualized approach. You can't just have a blanket approach of, here's how we're going to roll our benefits, here's how we're going to communicate. There needs to be options, because we have 4 generations in the workplace today, and they all like to be communicated in different ways and are all comfortable in different ways. And we always say too, anything you're trying to communicate that has any complexity whatsoever, you need to communicate these things 7 times in 7 ways before people really hear it for the first time. So if you're just communicating during open enrollment, it's, like you said, it's overload. It's in one ear and out the other. All they're focused on is, how much is my medical insurance going up this year, right? That's all people really are thinking about. So I love what you're talking about there. Awesome. Thanks, Annie. So we're going to go over to Rick now, and this kind of actually transitions really well into the first question I had for you, which is around technology, communication with technology, things that are changing in the workforce. There's a lot. We're using this great Let's Go platform, right? This is a huge shift in how we can have a conversation, especially in hybrid and, remote working environments. And the topic of technology is huge. And so I want to narrow it down a little bit to something that I know you're passionate about, which is data.
Yeah.
How do you see data impacting the employee experience?
Yeah, it's a good question, Chelsea. And I know the participants can't see Alex. We can see Alex. He's our producer. The Let's Go platform is just fantastic. This is so cool, by the way. So just wanted to give kudos where kudos are due. If you just take a step back, the term employee experience, if you go to Google and you just start searching on employee experience, you'll notice quickly there's a heavy technology bend to a lot of the articles out there. Employee experience as a field or a concept is really derived from user experience, which is of course important in software development. And so, especially at larger organizations or enterprises, they use the term employee experience to think about how are we creating an efficient process for people to leverage all the things that Annie talked about, right? Their benefits, get their compensation information, access to development resources. And so for mid-sized and smaller organizations, that technology component doesn't always resonate, but data should. And the benefits of technology is that you're generating a lot of information about your employees that you can use to educate decisions and make more strategic decisions. And so we actually, at CorTalent, we see this as one of the biggest opportunities for many of our clients is just to bring forward a little bit of data in the decision-making process around your talent. I actually was working with the leader in a previous role, and he was a vice president, had a fairly large team. And I was like, hey, I'd love to just kind of share some data about your team. And he goes, Rick, you work in human resources. What data do you have? And so it was just kind of this funny reminder. I was like, oh, we've got a lot of work to do just in terms of educating leaders that there is a lot of rich information that they can use that actually isn't that hard to access. And can really improve how you think about leading your team. And so just to give some specific examples, if you're not collecting data around employee engagement, that's a kind of a quick, easy win for many organizations. You could use a free SurveyMonkey tool and literally just Google employee engagement survey questions, and you could probably next week start doing it on your own. One of the things with employee engagement is that the action can become part of the intervention. And so the fact that you as a leader are doing this for your team will sort of have this inherent boost to employee engagement, right? This person cares about what I think to the point where they want to proactively solicit my opinion. And so there's more to it than just doing the survey, obviously, and we help clients with that process. But that's a really quick, easy way to get some good talent data. If you're not collecting performance data, that's kind of one of those foundational elements around leadership where it just gives you a better sense in terms of who's meeting expectations, who's delivering on the assignments that they're given. What is the quality of the work? Are they collaborating well? And so performance data, and you can kind of think of that traditionally as an end of year review, but more progressive companies are looking at sort of these quarterly touch bases to generate a sense of, is this employee progressing? Are they regressing? Or are they kind of in a steady state? Mm-hmm. Now, another area that we work a lot with clients on is assessment data. And assessment data is obviously more individualized. It's a micro approach to talent data, but it can really inform how to strategically leverage talent within an organization. And so if you're thinking about promoting someone into a leadership role, or if you've got high potential talent that you want to make sure they stay and that you're continuing to grow them in a way that aligns with their career aspirations, but also continues to maximize the value they provide the organization, assessment data can be really, really useful.
Yeah, and I see in taking that kind of to the next step is looking at the data that you're getting. Mm-hmm. And then as time goes on, who do you see being successful and what are their assessment results and how do you compare those? And so it's stepping back and looking at the whole picture, not just assessment by assessment, what makes sense, but stepping back, looking at the whole picture. Who have we seen be successful in these leadership roles or in these engineering roles or in these sales roles, and kind of getting those benchmarks for your company? Because usually there's benchmarks that exist for other companies, which is a great starting point, but where do you benchmark yourself? And what works in your organization based off of your core beliefs and your values and the purpose of your company and all of that. So,
Yeah, you're exactly right, Chelsey. And what we refer to those benchmarks as key talent indicators. And so we actually have a process where we can help create scorecard metrics that plug directly into your business scorecard. Because really, how you lead your talent influences your ability to succeed in your business goals. And so we can help companies identify what are sort of those key critical metrics that we want to be aware of. What are those internal benchmarks that we want to drive towards? And then are we making progress so that we can execute on our business goals?
Yeah, awesome. Something that, and this leads into this, something that I know you're passionate about is people and organizations' ability to grow and advance and just that continuous improvement mentality. If an organization is focused on that, what impact does that have on attracting and retaining top talent?
Yeah, a great question. This is where I've spent the majority of my career. I do have a deep passion, both in terms of helping talent grow within an organization, but really, if you look at it from the company's side, helping unlock potential within an organization that lets you do really cool things, right? Go after initiatives that maybe you didn't think were possible previously. And so once that bar starts to raise through really strategic and effective talent development, it is unbelievable how many cool things start to happen within companies. And so I like to think of talent development, but as it looks on the slide, growth opportunities as like the best win-win-win for a company that you could ever think of, because people are happy, they're building new skills, they're advancing their own careers, companies are getting better, they're adding more value for their customers, they're being more innovative in terms of how they approach their work. And then clients benefit, right? Either cost goes down or quality goes up. And so there's just no downside as it relates to really thinking strategically around growth opportunities. Now, some practical examples of what this looks like. And I would say what this looks like in the context of employee experience, but also in this sort of emerging landscape that we're stepping into post-pandemic, mid-Great Recession, addressing some of the challenges that Annie brought up so eloquently when she was speaking. An opportunity that almost all companies can take advantage of are stretch assignments and job rotations. And so I've seen many organizations be strategic about this. I've actually worked for companies that kind of had to do this out of necessity during the pandemic to reallocate people to address the changing needs in the organization, but realize that, hey, it's really not that hard to take somebody who has an interest in accounting that's currently in customer service and have them just do some side work, right? 4 hours a week. And what ends up happening in these stretch assignments or job rotations, even if it's some very modest number of hours per week, that employee's engagement goes up, their overall experience at that company goes up, they start building new skills. And if the accounting team grows, this person is already trained, already up and running, right? So they can very quickly and easily slot into that role. If the accounting team stays the same size, now this person is much more informed about how the overall company interact, or how departments interact with each other, how the overall company works. And so there are often these organic process improvements that start emerging. And so it's just a really cool opportunity. Another kind of low-hanging fruit option is coaching and mentoring. I don't think I have to sell anybody on the benefits of coaching and mentoring. It is worth being explicit. It just doesn't take that much to get it up and running in your organization, or to find people outside of your organization who are willing to do it for free. And then, and I think Annie kind of touched on this too, right? Just having regular conversations is so critical, demonstrating that commitment to growth opportunities. So when you have quarterly conversations with your employees, talk about their career aspirations. If you assign a development goal, check in with them on progress. That constant drumbeat that this is important, and we're going to spend time talking about it, is really important for employees.
Yeah, and as I think about this and using data to make decisions, and coaching and mentoring and stretch assignments and kind of getting all of this wrapped up together, to me at the core of all of this is there has to be a really good level of trust between the employee and their direct leader. Otherwise, they're not going to be very open and honest about what it is that they want to do and how they want to grow and develop. And when you're holding them accountable to these metrics that you're holding them accountable to, that can feel really icky if you don't have a very close relationship with them.
Yep.
So what experiences have you had with trust in the workplace, and how has it impacted your experience?
Yeah, such a great question, Chelsey. And I feel like I'm borrowing a lot from what Annie said. I have a lot of opinions on this, and I could talk for a long time about it. There's this old saying in talent management. It's a cartoon, and it's a CEO talking to a CFO, and the CFO says, "What if we train these people and they leave?" And then the CEO says, "What if we don't and they stay?" I think that's such a perfect distillation of this issue of trust, right? I worked for a very savvy leader, and he would always say, if someone leaves our company, we want them to be the best advocate possible for their experience and their time that they spent with us. And so it really does require a longer term mindset and an understanding that if I invest in this person, and let's just say worst case scenario, they leave our organization, they can still advocate that other people should join our company because they had such a great time here. And so the benchmark, employee retention is a very important metric that companies need to be aware of, but the benchmark can't be that they stay forever, right? And I'd argue, actually, you don't want employees to feel like they have to stay forever. And so thinking really long-term can help shift the mindset on what a trusting relationship can look like and what a good outcome can look like, both for the company as well as for the employee.
Yeah. Awesome. So what we want to do is, what we found out in these workshops is that we all have a lot of experiences that we've been through, things that we've done over the last, few years, and we can learn a lot from one another. And so we want to do some table talk here, and Annie and Rick and I will hop into each of the tables during this time as well. We just have 2 questions that we want you guys to be thinking about and discussing at your tables. And one is, how have you adjusted your benefit strategy over the last 24 months? As you're looking at the changing workplace dynamics, hybrid workforce, access to care, multi-generational gaps, mental health pandemic, all of these things, how have you adjusted your benefit strategy in the last 24 months? And then the second question is around employee experience, and what is your biggest people pain point right now? And then if you think about that one step further, if that pain point was gone, what could you do? What could your team do? What could your company do? So again, 2 questions. How have you adjusted your benefit strategy in the last 24 months? And what's your biggest people pain point right now? So we'll take about 10 minutes or so to discuss at the tables, and then we'll hop back up on stage and see if there's any aha moments that we can share with the broader group. So we'll be popping over the tables. I hope you guys had really great conversations at your tables. I know we did. We had a couple of really fun new ideas, at least in me, that I hadn't heard before at our table. And so I'll share a couple of those. I want to ask Ryan if you can hop up on stage with us here and share your comments that you had specifically around communicating the benefits.
Did I make it? Am I up there?
You're on stage. Welcome.
Cheers. Thanks. Yeah. Ryan McKesson and I work for a company called Solution Design Group in Golden Valley, Minnesota. We're a local software development consulting firm. So certainly tech heavy, and certainly in the last couple of years, communication has been interesting, if not a challenge. And so one of the things we're talking about is communications around benefits and even wellness programs that we have. And we've created Slack channels specific to wellness, health, fitness, benefits, specifically on the benefits piece, where people can ask questions and get answers, and sort of, like as I mentioned, meet our consultants where they're at in terms of communication.
And I just love that, because it's, again, meeting your people where they're at, individualized approach. It's a quick, people, if you use Slack or you use Teams, whatever it is, they're on there all the time. And it's just another way, a different way to communicate, to get some consistency and cadence out there around benefits or anything, right? You can have a multitude of different channels, but I love the idea of having a specific one for wellness, specific one for benefits, and being more proactive with your communication than reactive around it. So awesome. Thanks, Ryan. You can hop back to your table.
Okay, cheers.
All right, a couple other things that I had heard in my session, specifically around benefits, was doing a Q&A session, which I think is a really great idea, having those regularly throughout the year. Again, so it's not just open enrollment, but having regular Q&A sessions that anyone can attend. Great for new hires, but also great for anyone else who has questions on that. A lot of virtual wellness initiatives going on, whether it's meditation sessions, healthy eating habits, things like that. And then the people side, everyone said hiring is the number one pain point, which we keep hearing all the time. And then Rick asked the great question, is it hiring or is it retention? And if we can retain our people, obviously we don't have to rehire for them. So why are people leaving? Conducting stay interviews. So we're thinking about this more proactively again versus reactively. But this all comes back to trust. And we have to have a high level of trust with the leader and their employee if they're going to have these open and honest conversations within their state interviews. And then if they are exiting the organization, what does that experience look like for them? Because if they have a positive experience exiting, they might come back and they might then be more likely to recommend someone else to come work for your company. So I think those are all things to think about. Annie, anything from your table that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I think we had a really great conversation about, some of the additional things different employers are doing. Christina had mentioned that they're being more intentional about the time spent together. So things like, having different events hosted by the company, think of Top Golf, anything that adds value to their culture, and really, that human element around getting together, having those one-on-one conversations. And then the mentoring piece of it as well. I know Rick hit on that in the panel discussion as well. I think that's key. We had another good conversation about bonus plans and more on the compensation side of things that Scott had mentioned that I thought was really great. But I think culture is key. I know we're hitting on that hard, but at the end of the day, that I think is what really drives business success and helps, of course, in the retention piece of the discussion as well.
Annie, I love that you included mentoring, and I saw leadership development on your slides as well as part of your benefits package. I mean, it just speaks to this evolving landscape where companies try and keep their employees physically healthy, but they try and keep their careers healthy. And so it's just that broad sort of holistic mindset I thought was really, really cool.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, we want to just kind of wrap it up here. And if there is any questions that you guys have, we would love to connect. Again, if you open up the map on the very top of the screen up there, you'll see our tables. So if you want to have questions for Annie around benefits, communication of benefits, anything like that, with Rick as far as hiring and in building trust and data or any of those employee experience topics, please stick around after and join us at one of the tables. Just to leave you with a couple of things that I'm really taking away. Thinking about your benefits as an investment versus an expense. Realizing that there's been an evolution of benefits and you need to meet your people where you're at, whether that's what you're offering or how you communicate it and help educate people, that it's not a one-time communication around open enrollment. And then around our people, using the data that you have, doing as many things as you can to understand who are your people, where are they at, where do they want to grow, how do they want to develop, and collecting that data and using it in a big picture sense, as well as with each individual. And then just really utilizing as many roads as you can to help grow and develop your people, because that's going to help your organization grow. People drive culture, culture drives everything. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. So those are some of my biggest takeaways that I had. So hopefully you guys had some great takeaways as well. Thank you so much for joining. And we'll be back again next month with more topics around people and culture. So hopefully you can stick around. We'll hop up to our tables here and be around for the next few minutes. Thanks, everyone.